The Catholic Church has long fascinated people. Its rich history is well documented, but there's other aspects of the Church that aren't talked about, some being ancient text scriptures in the Vatican's Apostolic Archive. With very little being known about it, this 53-mile or 85-kilometre archive is full of tens of thousands of books, many of which are said to detail ancient events. The Bible is composed of lots of different books. It's thought of as a holy gospel truth by millions across the globe, written by Moses and others around 1000 BC. It tells of Jesus' miracles, from the well-known tale of the Good Samaritan to when he fed the thousands with only 5 loaves and 2 fish. In fact, the Bible is the most printed book in the world, with around 5 billion copies produced. However, the original version actually contained more books than present in modern versions. Naturally, people found this a little bit strange. The 14 scriptures are known, but they are still yet to be printed in the modern-day versions, leaving many to wonder, what are the churches hiding? Once people found this out, they started to look deeper into some of these old tales and books. The ones that interest people the most revolves around stories of mysterious entities. The belief in demonic possession is that an entity, demon or spirit is able to control someone's actions against their will. Those who claim to be possessed often maintain that symptoms of possession include memory loss, the inability to control oneself, and voices in one's mind. The demonic entity known as Valak has been featured in various movies, but the entity is actually based on old 17th century documents. Here it reveals that Valak has the ability to control things, mainly serpents, and can make these creatures do whatever it wants. Although it doesn't take on the form of a nun, it's heavily detailed in the book The Lesser Key of Solomon, which has been described by historians as being a book that contains a mix of spells, conjurations, natural secrets, and ancient wisdom. There's many entities that are similar to this that have been featured in various different books, many of which have been lost to history, or have been hidden away. Some have suggested that there's many books that are hiding inside the Vatican, and that it's very unlikely that they'll ever see the light of day. The exorcism industry has become popular in Britain, Italy, and Ireland. Religious experts, including both Vatican and Anglican priests, agree that demonic possession seems to be a pressing issue in today's society. Scientific and non-religious experts, however, warn of the dangers of spiritual abuse. An exorcist from Sicily, Father Pallia, states that the Church is aware of the controversy surrounding the belief in exorcisms, but that the exorcism training is essential because a self-taught exorcist certainly makes errors. Meanwhile, Father Collins in Ireland has said that the Irish people seek his guidance and help in almost everyday dealings with what they describe to be demonic influences. It's only in recent years that the demand has risen exponentially. What I'm finding out is people in their own minds believe rightly or wrongly that they're afflicted by an evil spirit. Father Collins shared his mixed views on the matter, however. I think in many cases they wrongly think it, but when they turn to the Church doesn't know what to do with them. Despite his own dedication to the Catholic faith, he disagrees with the concept of so many sudden cases being real. It's mentioned in several biblical episodes of the New Testament that Jesus drove out demons from people infested with evil. Catholic priests believe there are several kinds of possession. Obsession includes sudden irrationality, obsessive thoughts, and taking their own lives. Typically, these manifest into one's dreams, slowly tormenting them. Oppression is when the victim loses consciousness, or is forced by the entity to act against their morals or will, controlling their body or sending the victim's life spiraling into misfortune. Possession as we know it is when Satan or another demon takes full control of a person's body and uses it as a vessel without their consent. This is typically seen in Catholicism to be in part the fault of the victim, as they must have done something which allowed Satan's influence into their lives. Infestation refers to demons inhabiting objects, things, animals, or even houses. This is what occurred in the house which the movie The Conjuring was based off. Subjection, however, is when a person gives in to the possession of their own free will, consenting to having their body to be used as an unholy vessel. Other symptoms of possession are superhuman strength, the ability to speak in tongue or foreign languages, knowledge of obscure information the victim should not know, blasphemy, wrath, and excessive profanity, as well as a painful aversion to holy names, symbols, and relics. Catholic doctrine states that demonic possession can occur as a result of a mental disorder, but the cases of mental sickness shouldn't be mistaken for unholy influence. Officially, Catholic exorcisms may only occur under the strict authority of a bishop, and should adhere to very specific rules. Unfortunately, such rules are hardly followed in reality, as many people turn to non-official exorcists, instead of struggling to attain the Vatican's permission. The human experience is incredible. As humans, we have the potential to undergo a range of different things in the course of our lives. Some people have it easy and others not so much. The human body is both remarkably resilient and yet surprisingly fragile. When we spend the winter sheltered indoors and the summer covering ourselves in sun cream, it can be hard to remember just how impressive the human race can be. The US Coast Guard has announced that they spotted some strange activity on this uninhabited island. After going in for a closer look, it was revealed that 3 Cubans had been stranded on this island for over a month. After the US Coast Guard made contact, the 2 men and women said they survived on the island by eating rats. A Coast Guard surveillance plane revealed it spotted the 3 people after they were doing a routine patrol of the nearby area. The Coast Guard said the following: "They noticed some unusual flags down there, some different colours. They noticed some orange. They went back around to check it out, and they noticed 3 people signalling them." End quote. Aircraft Commander Mike Hallett said that once they touched down, the trio said they ate rats to survive, and detailed that they set up a large makeshift shelter. The United States Coast Guard continued with the following: "We are assisting 3 people who have reportedly been stranded on an island in the Bahamas for 33 days. An Air Station Miami aircrew dropped a radio, food and water. Our rescue swimmer found them to be fatigued, dehydrated and showing definite signs of just being out in the elements for an extended amount of time. Luckily enough, the Cubans were saved, with the United States Coast Guard saying that they weren't sure how much longer they could have survived out there, and that it seems that they reached them just in time." This isn't the only survival story. Every year thousands of people go missing, with many of them eventually being found. In 2009, an Australian coachwatch plane was conducting its usual checks, when the pilot saw something a little out of the ordinary: 2 men floating at sea in an icebox. 2 Burmese men, both in their 20s, were found to have been floating out in the sea for 25 days, with only each other and an icebox. In December 2008, a group of 90 men went fishing in a 12-metre Thai fishing boat. When the group were, as estimated by the men, 200 miles north of Australia, the wooden fishing boat began to break apart in the sea's rough water. Although the group was much larger, sadly these 2 men are thought to have been the only survivors, as whilst others struggled and failed to grasp something to allow them to stay afloat. These 2 men were able to climb in the 5-foot by 4-foot icebox, described as the size of a desk. Tracy Jiggins, an Australian Maritime Safety Authority spokeswoman, elaborated and explained that without floating devices, it's highly likely anyone could have survived for 25 days, especially in such harsh conditions, meaning no search was conducted for the other individuals aboard the fishing boat. When recounting their brave story, the men mentioned the fishing boat having sent out distress signals before it broke up, but these were met with silence and no responses. When the fishing boat split, all of the members were frantic in aiming to grab hold of something, purely to stop themselves from drowning. The men also spoke about seeing another crew member pass by them, too far away to help them in the icebox. Throughout the course of the month, these heroic men believed that numerous ships saw them, and yet no attempt was made to come to their aid. Though Tracy Jiggins has mentioned during interviews that being of such a small size and such a vast space, these men were highly fortunate to be spotted. The men had an unpredictable and perilous journey, floating through the sea during monsoon season, and where there'd been recent storms, all they had was just an icebox for safety. The pair had no choice but to follow the tide, as this was all that could guide them through shark-infested waters. Though the men drifted hundreds of miles in the icebox, they feared each day that rough waters would result in them being tossed from the box, leading them to meet the same fate as the rest of their fishing crew. It's thought that the men managed to survive by drinking rainwater that had collected in the bottom of their icebox, and eating bits of fish from within the bottom of the container, as the icebox had been used to keep the fish that they caught during their fishing trip. Help came to these men's aid when the Australian coach watch plane, which had been completing regular checks for illegal immigrants, or fishermen illegally entering Australian waters, spotted the two men waving their shirts to signal for attention. Upon seeing the pair in such distress, a rescue helicopter was called in order to bring the pair to safety. The men were spotted between Australia and Indonesia. The rescue helicopter, piloted by Terry Gadame, commented that the men's first words upon being rescued were, "Could we have a drink?" When talking on the matter, these triumphant survivors said, "We're so glad you found us. We couldn't have lasted much longer." These poor men, despite finding eventual success and safety, floated for a month across shark-infested waters, with scraps of fish and rainwater to survive off, a true testament to the human will. So what do you make of these survival stories? Be sure to leave your questions and answers in the comment section below, and help us to grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.